Hi, good morning, everyone. Welcome to the TradeStation Masterclass. Today, we're going to talk a little bit about EasyLanguage and how you can modify built-in indicators and make them look the way that you want. The title of today's presentation is Adding Plots to Indicators, something that sounds difficult to do, but it's quite simple. And today's class is to show you that you can just take any existing indicator and make some modifications so that they have the calculations you need. That's what we mean by adding plots. But before we jump into today's topic, let's just do the usual introductions. My name is Jesus Nava. I'm the Director of Client Training and Education for TradeStation Securities. I always enjoy talking about TradeStation, especially if it's gonna help you in your analysis and your trading. Here are some disclosures that we need to be aware of. Keep in mind that every symbol and idea that we talk about is for educational purposes only. These are not recommendations of TradeStation. Also, active trading is not suitable for everyone, and it should only be done with risk capital. Past historical performance is no guarantee of future results. And for anybody that needs additional details on these disclosures, you can go to www.tradestation.com/important-information. All right. Welcome, everyone. Let's go ahead and get started. I'm going to switch over here to my TradeStation platform and get started here. One of the things that I wanted to say, though, is that learning a little bit of EasyLanguage will open up many possibilities in terms of technical analysis and strategy trading for you. So if you haven't started your learning journey in EasyLanguage, I encourage everyone to at least become familiar with EasyLanguage because it's going to allow you to look at the way that indicators are calculated and better yet, make modifications, which is what we're going to do today. Let's go ahead and take a look at a few indicators and think of some of the things that we would like to add or remove. So that's the purpose of this class. If you have any things that you've tried to do on the TradeStation platform and you haven't been able to, then let us know. Send us a question and we'll be happy to provide you details. The chat is open, so you're welcome to send any comments, any questions that you may have, and I'll be glancing at it over here once in a while to make sure that I address all your questions, okay? So let's go ahead and get started. I'm gonna open up a chart analysis window. All right, and let's do something simple first. All right. This is the chart. Let's take a look at something that's built into TradeStation. I'm going to go to Studies, Add Studies, and let's use the popular RSI, the Relative Strength Index. Here it is. I'm going to click OK. And I'm just going to click OK to that. I'm not going to change any parameters for now. All right, and this is the way that the RSI study looks at the bottom. Okay, so let's suppose that we are in the process of taking a look at the RSI, and you start thinking about what other ways could we change the calculation. Maybe if you want to test different scenarios or if you want to refine the calculation, whatever the reason is, we need a way to modify how the default indicator plots and how it calculates. A quick way for us to open up EasyLanguage within the TradeStation platform is by right-clicking on the indicator. I'm going to right-click on that RSI, and I'm just going to go over here to edit EasyLanguage for RSI. I find this to be the quickest way for you to access EasyLanguage on any study or strategy. Just right-click on it. So edit EasyLanguage for RSI will open up the development environment and will open up the RSI EasyLanguage code for me. If you haven't seen EasyLanguage before, this may be a little bit overwhelming, but if you're familiar with EasyLanguage, you know exactly what I'm about to do and how I'm going to approach, the modification of this study. So let me go back here to my chart and think about ways in which we can analyze the RSI differently. And one of the things that I don't see is an average of that RSI line. Now, this is this RSI study. It's very similar to stochastics. I'm not sure if you were here one of my recent classes. I know that Manolo did ask me if I was going to share a video but maybe not, in case you guys need it. But in one of my recent presentations, we talked about RSI and we talked about stochastics. And we one of the things that we talked about was that these two indicators are very similar. Now, if you guys remember the stochastic has a fast K and a fast D, two lines that are calculated as part of the study. And what it's looking for is for the fast K, or in this case, I think we highlighted the slow one, the slow K and the slow D. The fast K has a more, has a more static key calculation. It's not as smooth as the slow K, so that's why we highlighted the slow K. So one of the ideas of stochastic is that these two lines have to cross over the oversold area, or they have to cross under the oversold area. So that's where the crossover needs to occur. So if you want to do something similar here on the RSI, we may be wanting to add an average of the RSI and look at the crossovers of the RSI with that moving average at these areas, the oversold and the overbought. I'm just throwing out an idea. I'm not sure if this will, make the RSI calculation better, but it's just different things that you can think of and have the ability to translate that into something that TradeStation can understand and RSI can plot for you. So let's go ahead and take a look. Thank you for that, Manolo. He shared the link right there for that presentation. By the way, Manolo is my colleague. He works for TradeStation, and any comments you see from him are from TradeStation. So he's going to be our guy moderating the chat. Okay, so let's go ahead and go back to the development environment where we were. A few things stand out. For example, right here in the inputs section of this indicator, we have added functionality that I've talked about in many of my EasyLanguage classes, but something new, or not new, but recently added to the TradeStation platform is the ability for you to modify an indicator. Let me go and double click on this RSI and be able to hover over any of these inputs and get what's called a tooltips. You see the little explanatory line that gives you details on the inputs. That's exactly what the new feature does. It allows you to hover over any of these inputs and get a text description of what that input is. Well, that text is part of the EasyLanguage code. So this section that you see, let me highlight it. So this whole highlight that says display name, price, and the tooltip, enter an EasyLanguage expression to use in the RSI calculation, that is what controls that little pop-up that shows up when you hover over inputs. But the input itself is just this, price, parentheses, and then the price that you're going to start that input off as. Okay, so just a little bit of EasyLanguage construct so that anytime that we open up an indicator, you get an idea of what to expect. Most of the indicators and most of the strategies that you find on the TradeStation platform are written using the same structure. So you're going to find the inputs at the very top, and do not be overwhelmed with all this text that is on each one of these inputs, because that's just added functionality. It's optional. You don't really have to have a tooltips built into a custom indicator. But then we have our variables. Variables are kind of small containers that are going to keep a specific formula or a specific calculation. If we do decide that we're going to add an additional plot, and that plot has a calculated value, we may have to use a variable. Variables are also something that is optional. It's going to make your code a little bit more efficient in terms of readability and calculation, because a lot of these variables only have to be calculated once. But we'll take a look at our ideas and try to determine if we need a variable or not. In this case, the RSI value, notice that was declared as a variable name, and then the RSI value was assigned a calculation. RSI value is just a made up word. And in here in the code, we're letting EasyLanguage know what that made up word means and what the calculation is. This RSI that is in purple is a built-in function. TradeStation has hundreds of built-in functions that you can use inside of your code. So you don't have to create code from scratch. You can just use the functions, and that'll make your programming so much easier. The RSI function needs two parameters in order to calculate. It needs the price that you're calculating the RSI on, and what period. I mean, over how many bars are you calculating that RSI? As you can see, these two parameters, price and length, are up here as an input, because you can modify what value are you going to be supplying the RSI calculation. But as a default, it's going to plug in the closing price. Notice how the default for price is close. And then the length is going to be 14. That's the default value. So it plugs those two parameters. It calculates the RSI of the closing price over a period of 14 bars. And then it stores that result in a word that we call the RSI value. From there, it's just a matter of plotting that value on the chart. If you look at plot number 1, it has the RSI value, which is the variable name that was declared inside of this code. Notice the plot statements. Plot statements are simple and straightforward. You can see how the plots are numbered. So when you think about a study, of course, you're going to be mentally drawing all of its lines. For the RSI, you probably remember that it has the RSI line, which is kind of staticky, and then it has an overbought and an oversold level displayed right on the chart. So it has 3 plots, and that's what you have, plot 1 to plot 3. In EasyLanguage, you can add up to 99 additional plots to an indicator. Up until now, I haven't seen any indicator use up, all those 99 different plots, but just it's just a sign that it's fully flexible, and you can, get very creative when it comes to plotting lines on your indicator. So we have 3 plots. One is the RSI value, other one is the overbought, and the other one is the oversold. So we did say that we wanted to add sort of an average to do a similar type of calculation of stochastics that is looking for crossovers on the overbought and the oversold. So how do we do that? How do we approach that? Well, first of all, we need to calculate or know how to calculate an average. Well, the same way that there exists a function for the RSI, there is a function already for average. When you are in doubt, or you want to find out, how many functions or what functions the EasyLanguage development environment supports, go to the dictionary. Right here on the far right edge of my development environment, I have dictionary and I have properties. If I go over dictionary, it allows me to search things in the dictionary without having it visible. It'll just move away if I get my cursor out of that screen. Let me go back to the dictionary. Over here in this tree of folders and structure, open up EasyLanguage. And a subcategory here on EasyLanguage is going to be user functions. I'm going to click here, user functions, and you're going to notice here on the right-hand side, a list of all the functions that are built into the language. So if you're learning EasyLanguage, maybe it's a good idea to go in there and see what type of calculations are already created for you, so you don't have to create them from scratch. So if I go and scroll to the very top where the A's are, because I'm looking for average, I should find something that calculates that for me. And here it is. We have average, and you can see that at the bottom, there's a sort of summary of what the function does. And you can see this, it returns a simple average of values over length bars. And it also tells you how many parameters it needs. And what I find most useful is that it provides you an example, provides you a way of using the function in a practical way so that you can understand how to use it for your own analysis. So that's what I'm going to do. I need average plus the 2 parameters. So let's go over here to my code. And the first thing that I think about, if I'm doing a moving average, of course I can hard code how many periods I want to use for that average. For the most part, a lot of us want that flexibility of being able to go to the format of the indicator and change the parameter. So at one point, we may want a 10-bar moving average or a 20-bar moving average. In this case, we're not really going by the price bars. We're looking at the RSI values. And this is the way that I want to start this off. I'm going to add a new input. So this last semicolon that you see right here at the very end, by the way, semicolon is like telling EasyLanguage, this is the end of my statement. I'm going to go on to something else. You can see that other lines have a comma because it's creating a list of inputs. But once you finish your list of inputs, at the very end, you have a semicolon. So right here, I'm going to replace that semicolon with a comma because I'm going to add another one. And this is going to be not length because I don't want to have a conflict between the length that is being used up here and the length that I'm going to be adding. So for this, I'm going to call this AVG length so that I know that it's referencing the average. And I'm going to start this off with a 10. And that's it. I don't need to add, remember when I said at the very beginning, I don't need to add this tooltips kind of thing because it's not mandatory. I guess in the list of inputs, this would be the only one that would not show a tooltip, which is okay. Let me verify this. You know, you have this verification check mark at the very top. I find it convenient, but it checks your code. Anytime that I make a small change, I verify this. And I probably broke one of the rules that I sometimes say it's very important, which is I made the changes directly on the original document, the original RSI. And that's probably something that you want to be careful of. Because as you learn EasyLanguage, you may break things. You know, I've broken many indicators and then I haven't been able to go back to the original because all the changes were made on the original copy. So if you're learning and you just want to test different things without, breaking the original indicator, then make sure that you save a copy of the indicator into a different name so that you know that, oh, this is my version of the RSI. So I'm going to come over here. And I know the only thing that I did is added, that input, but it's okay. I'm glad that I caught myself. In fact, if I do Control Z, the development environment has a history of things that you've done to the editor. And I think it remembers the last 100 things that you've done. So if you do Control Z multiple times, you're going to see how it just backtracks and it goes back to how it was originally. So let me verify this so that the RSI, oh, that's not the button that I wanted to click on. That's the open EasyLanguage document. Let me go ahead and cancel out of that. What I wanted to do is click on verify up here. All right, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to the file menu and go to save as, and that's the way that you create a copy of this. And I'm going to call this, for most of my studies, I use an exclamation JN at the very beginning. Get into the habit of adding a prefix to your custom work so that everything is grouped together, especially if you're going to start searching for your own custom indicators. I'm pretty sure that I have already an exclamation JN RSI, but let's go ahead and try it. Yeah, it already exists. I probably have used this as an example in the past. So let's go ahead and take a look. RSI AVG. Oh, it's still. Let me call this average. Already in use. Average cross. Let's go ahead and click OK. All right. So you can see that at the very top, the tab has already been renamed. This is an exclamation JN RSI average cross. It has exactly the same code because the code carries over. But now I have the ability to make changes to this code and start it from there. So I'm going to add a comma again. This is AVG length. I'm going to start this off at 10. Let's verify. Okay, in addition to the RSI value as a variable, I want to create another one. So I'm going to add a comma here. And my other variable that I want to use is the RSI value AVG. So I'm going to kind of use a similar name to the one that's already been calculated, but this time add the average kind of thing at the very end. Remember, this is a made up word. As long as the word shows up in black, just means that EasyLanguage is unable to recognize it. So you're kind of, free to use it. In this case, It's a made up word that I want to use, and I want to initialize this to 0. That parentheses, 0 parentheses, all it does is that it tells the EasyLanguage what type of variable it is. And if you put a 0 inside parentheses, you're telling that this is a numeric variable and it'll hold a number. So how do we do the calculation? Well, we have the assignment for the RSI value ending in semicolon. Semicolon is one of those punctuation marks that you always have to remember. Punctuation tells the code that this is the end of my idea. I'm going to go on to something else. And that way, EasyLanguage doesn't try to mix statements together, which could break the code. In this case, I'm going to hit line return here, and I'm going to add the RSI value AVG is going to be equal to, now this is where I assign the calculation to this new made up word, and I'm going to do an average. And this goes back to what we saw in the dictionary. I took you there. We looked for user functions and we selected average, and we saw the example, and we saw that after using the word average, we have to supply what is it that we're trying to average and for how many periods. Well, the value that we are trying to average is the RSI value. So we are going to put a function inside, we're going to put a variable inside a function, something you can do freely as many times as you need to. And in addition to that, we have to tell the average function for how many periods you want to create that average. And that's where my new made up input is going to come in very handy. I'm going to copy that, paste it down here, and then close the parentheses. That's my average function. It's averaging the RSI value. And that's it. Let me go ahead and add a semicolon at the very end. Don't forget that semicolon so that EasyLanguage knows that is the end. And right here at the bottom, where we have the plot statements, is exactly where you want to add your additional plot. So I'm going to come over here at the very end of line 26. It will go into line 27. I'm going to add plot 4. Remember that you can go up to 99. And this will be RSI value AVG. We're going to give this this plot a name, and I'll show you where the name shows up. I think it's convenient for you to always remember that there's an optional name that you can assign to it. Otherwise, it'll just be a plot number, like plot 1, plot 2, plot 3, and then it's harder for you to identify which plot is which. So in this case, this is going to be RSI AVG, and I'm going to close the parentheses and then end the whole statement with a semicolon. I'm adding this extra space between the parentheses and the semicolon just to keep the code consistent because the other lines have it, but it's not necessary. You see other things that I've done, for example, this is not necessary either, but I want to stay consistent with the code. I'm not adding an exclamation mark. This is something that was added not many years ago, but the exclamation is for translation services. If you needed to, provide a translated version of any of these calculated values. All right. Let me verify. Once I verify, the next thing that I think of is, well, I didn't tell the indicator how I want that line to look. So what comes next is for me to tell EasyLanguage, okay, I want this line, this thickness, I want it this color. So it doesn't really scream at you. You want it to feel like it's part of the study and blends in very nicely. How do you do that? Well, I'm going to right click on this code and I'm going to go to properties. This is the way that you access the indicator's properties. And I'm going to go to the chart style. Okay, I can use the same thickness if I want to. Oh, this is where the plot name shows up. So whatever you put in here inside quotations, RSI AVG, will show right here under plot, RSI AVG. So when it comes to editing, you know exactly which line is it the one you're editing. If all these said plot 1, 2, 3, and 4, you would be sitting here trying to figure out which one's which. But the names help in doing that. So this is RSI AVG. Let me go here to chart color. Let's make it a yellow and click OK. Once you select the styling of your indicator, it's very important that you come back and you verify the indicator one more time. Remember that when you select the parameters, those are not saved automatically to the study, so you have to verify it one more time. So a lot of times that's what you're going to be doing. You're going to, write your code, verify it, make sure it has no errors. Then go into properties so you can change, the styling, the scaling, the color, whatever it is about the indicator, and then come back and verify it again so that all those changes stick. Okay, so let's go back into my chart and see what this looks like. Let me remove the RSI that's there. And I'm going to, did I change the color? I actually did not change the color, right? So it's fine. Let me go here into the studies, click on add studies. And let me scroll over to the exclamation JN. Here we go. And this is RSI average cross. I'm going to click OK. And OK. Oh, this is not that bad. In fact, I'm not sure if I even selected that color, but now you have a version of the RSI that has a moving average built into it. Pretty cool, huh? Now, if I wanted to make any changes to the RSI or the length that's being used, double click on the study, go to the inputs, and you're going to see the inputs that you created are going to be here. The one we added last was this AVG length, which is calculating the average for 10 periods. I mean, the RSI values for 10 periods. So this is pretty cool. Now, another thing that I may want to do is probably, add maybe a 50 kind of line. And we have the overbought line and we have the oversold line. But if you're using the 50 line for maybe stops and targets or as a confirming line, maybe you want to have a visual of it as well. That's very easily done. Let me go back here to the code, because any horizontal line at a specific value doesn't really need a calculation. It's always going to be that same number every single bar. So a line at 50 is always 50 on every bar, so you don't have to calculate it. All you need to do is plot it. So what I'm going to do is add a plot number 5. And the value that I want to plot on the indicator is 50, right on the dot. So if you put in a number, the plot statement will do that precisely. We'll just draw on the chart at that specific value. And if you do that every single bar, then it'll just look like a horizontal line. All right. This is the label. It's going to be 50. I'm going to close the parentheses and then add a semicolon at the very end. Let's verify this. Let me check the style of that 50. I may want to do it more of a dark red. Okay, that's all what I want to do. I'm going to click OK, and I'm going to verify one more time. So now when I go back to my trade station, that's how I see my indicator. And now you have that line going through the middle. Interesting. Maybe I want to change the coloring. That's not really a plot statement, but if you look at if the RSI value, it's greater than overbought, then set plot color overbought color. So we can change this to, if we don't want to use the overbought and the oversold levels to to generate signals, we can use the 50 and say if RSI is greater than 50, then use the overbought color. But if it's less than 50, then less the oversold color. Of course, you can change it if you like. I'm going to verify this one more time. Go back to my trade station, and there you see a modified RSI with a moving average, a line at 50, and also the colors have changed. Now it's an oscillator crossing above 50 and below 50. Interesting, huh? Let's go ahead and take a look at another indicator and see how we can modify it. Hopefully we'll get a chance to see 2 other ones. Okay, let me go here to drawing, add, not drawing, I'm sorry, studies, add studies. Let's add, let's see, what's the study that I want to add? I believe we want to add %R. Here it is, %R. Is it percent %R? Percent %R looks very similar to the RSI. So let's go ahead and not use this one. Okay, very similar concept. Let's use, go to studies, add studies. Let's use the Keltner channel instead. Again, this is another study that I've talked about before. Keltner channel, here it is. I'm going to use same parameters, not changing them, and let's click OK. And this is the way that it looks. Now, if you're familiar with the Keltner channel, this calculates bands based on ATR. So that's average true range. This is for Ford. So the price is, quoted at a fairly, low price, but still we can calculate the ATR on this symbol. It's not as volatile as other stocks that exist in the market, but we can get some movement here. The idea here is that the Keltner channel uses ATR to create those bands, a multiple of ATR, and I believe that the multiple is 1.5. So let's go ahead and take a look at the code. I'm going to right-click on the indicator. Remember, that's what we did with the RSI. I'm going to go to Edit Easy Language for Keltner channel. All right, so here at the top, we have the inputs again, variables. We have the assignment of the variables, and then we have some plot statements here that are inside of an if-then statement, which is okay. I guess that's a way for you or for the user that's using this indicator to avoid any errors in the initial calculation. All right, so as you can see, the number of ATRs is 1.5. So it uses the calculation of ATR and adds that result to the average. So it calculates a shift, which is the number of ATRs times the average true range, and then just adds and subtracts that shift. All right, so let's go ahead and take a look at an additional calculation because I want to create other bands, add a little further down, I lost my train of thought, so let's go ahead and get to it. I'm sorry. So 2 bands are already built into the code, and we can see the upper band and the lower band. If we want to create additional lines, well, we probably need to add those additional lines to my code. Somebody's asking here in the chat, can I put a line in the middle of the price channel in the same way? Yes, for sure. Definitely. That's something that you can do. So whatever the calculation is, you can do it. Now, the Keltner channel is based on a moving average. So it already has a middle line. Now, the middle line, remember that the Keltner channel is just a moving average, and then we add a multiple of ATRs to the top, and then subtract a multiple of ATRs to the bottom, so it creates this sort of a channel. And the idea is that as the symbol becomes more volatile and the ATR increases in value because there's more price movement, that the bands will get further apart. And when there's very little movement, then a lot of times you see what's called a squeeze. You see the lines getting closer together and primed, for a breakout. So let's go ahead and add those additional lines to my code. I may use a different styling so I don't get them confused, but let's go back to the code and see. Okay, so we have an input for number of ATRs. You can see the default is 1.5. If we're going to add more lines, we probably need a similar input, but for my second set of bands. So the same way that we did earlier, if you want to simplify here your personal version of the Keltner channel, you can. I'm going to save as before I make any changes. I was going to do the same thing that I did earlier, which was, make changes right on the original. And we recommend you don't do that. So let's go here to File, Save As, and this will be !JN Keltner channel. Okay, this is my version. If it's my version, sometimes I remove all the tooltips because I know what the tooltips are and I have an understanding of the study, so I don't need all that text right here at the top of my code. So what I do is I come and I remove anything that I don't need. Like anything that is inside of square brackets, I don't need. And that simplifies the view of my code, of course. And this one right here, I'm going to get rid of it. Now, when I look at the inputs, you can see a simple list of inputs added here on my list. I'm going to come here at the very end of line 6, but right after the comma, hit enter, and I'm going to do num ATRs 2. So it's kind of the same concept, but this is my second line, right? And I'm going to start this value at 3, which is double what the original value is. Okay, so that's the first thing that I'm going to do. It gives you a little bit of flexibility if you want to change that parameter on the front end. And then I'm going to come here to the variables and add my bands. I'm going to add a comma, lower band 2. I'm going to initialize that to a 0. And then upper band 2, which is also 0. All right. Notice that some of the spacing here, it's optional. You know, if you want to keep things consistent, you can just add the spaces, you know, around the parentheses just so that it's a little bit more readable, I guess. So I've added those additional 2 bands, and then I just have to calculate those values right here. So line return, lower band 2 equals, and then I have upper band 2, and that equals. You can see how the average is already being calculated here on a variable that's called AVG. We're not going to be using the average function because that's already been done for us. We can just go straight into the variable name and do our calculation relying on that, you know, variable. So I'm going to do AVG. One thing that I didn't do is calculate another shift. So I have a shift here, but I need a shift 2. Shift 2, and I'm going to initialize that to 0. Initializing, again, is just letting EasyLanguage know that that's a numeric, because we have a shift for the 1.5 or 1.5, you know, ATRs, but we need a shift for the 3 ATRs, which is similar to this one. I'm going to copy this one so that I don't have to type it again. Hit return here, but this is shift 2 equals, and then I paste. I pasted a little bit too much. I don't need the original num ATRs. I need the one that I added here, num ATRs 2. I'm going to add a 2 over here, but everything else remains the same. The calculation of the true range, or the ATR, is done by this function that is in purple. So that doesn't change. What's changing is just the number of ATRs we're using. So that's for shift 2. So average plus shift 2. And then we'll do the low. Okay, that's not. The lower band is minus. Okay, there we go. And then the upper band is AVG plus shift 2. Upper band, lower band, we just did them a little bit backwards. Just be aware of how you're listing the bands and, you know, the minus and the plus, because those are types of errors that are not caught by the EasyLanguage verification process. These are more like your own errors that provide you a valid number, but it may be completely inaccurate if we're not careful on those minuses and those pluses, okay? Again, we're adding the plots. The Keltner channel has 3 plots by default. So let's go here to the very end of plot number 3, and we're going to add our additional plots. We don't need this right here. This place is just a way for you to move the indicator plots forward or backward on the chart. You know, very rarely I see technical analysts doing that, unless you have an indicator that is designed specifically to draw projections into the future. One of those examples is the Ichimoku cloud that projects some of the calculations into the future. And you may you may want to use not displace in this way because I kind of went on a tangent about adding space to the right, but it's not controlled like that. But at any given moment, if you wanted to move the calculation of an indicator and shift it to the left or to the right, a specific number of bars, you can use displace for that. For this indicator, I'm not going to use it. So I'm just going to open up the parentheses. And what I'm plotting here is, let's do the upper band first. Upper band, but this time I'm going to do band number 2, comma, and then I do the name. Remember, this is optional, but it'll be very handy when you go to the list of plots when you're formatting. And plot number 5 is going to be the lower band 2, lower band 2, and this will be lower band. Now, I cannot use the same name, so upper band 2, make sure that I have a unique name, and close the parentheses, and then add a semicolon at the very end. All right. Let's see if this verifies. Verification is successful. I don't get any errors. I am going to check the stylings. Let me go here to the properties, right-click properties. On chart style, I may want the upper band. In just a moment. Right here, I may use the upper band and make it a dotted line instead. And the lower band, I'm going to make it a dotted line so I can set a difference between the two. And on the chart color, the upper band, cyan is fine. Lower band, red, I think it follows those same colors. I want to, keep it consistent, but add these additional lines. I'm going to click OK and then verify one more time. Let's go back here to TradeStation. Okay, I'm going to remove the original Keltner channel. I'm going to go here to Studies, Add Studies. I'm going to look for the one we just created. That will be !JN, and we're going to do the Keltner channel. Where is it? Right here, JN Keltner channel. I'm going to click OK. And OK. Oh, by the way, before I click OK, in the inputs, notice how we have that convenient number of ATRs 2, which I defaulted to 3. And if I go to the style, you're going to see the additional plots that I created. Upper band 2, lower band 2. So anything you create in EasyLanguage transfers over here to the TradeStation platform very nicely when it comes to formatting the indicator. I click OK, and that's how my Keltner channel looks now. Now, in addition to keeping track of 1.5 ATRs, you're also looking at the other extreme, or another extreme with a 3 ATR calculation. I mean, you can continue to add more lines if you want to, maybe capture some of the more extreme values over here that are probably, at a 4 or 5, number of ATRs up or higher. So in the design of any technical idea, you're always thinking about how do the bars interact with those lines and how do they cross over? And if you're able to pinpoint any trading signals out of the analysis that you're creating, maybe if you're using these extremes and saying, well, I want my strategy to only trade when it goes beyond my 3 ATRs, and then use the 1.5 ATRs as ways of either managing my position, scaling out or scaling in, whatever the strategy you want to create, that's all based on the analysis that you build. So modifying the analysis techniques that are built into TradeStation is just the first step in developing strategies that you may want to test on your own. And that's one of the reasons why we give you all the tools that are available in order for you to modify indicators. Are there any questions on this functionality, the ability for you to go in here and modify the indicators and add plots? I think we've reached the end of the content that I wanted to present, but this is true for any type of studies that you have on TradeStation. So if, let me go over here and open up a new chart and just give you some other ideas. Let me open up my chart analysis one more time. All right. Bollinger Bands, let's put them up. The original indicator, as you can see, only has Bollinger Bands set at 2 standard deviations above and 2 standard deviations below. But what if you wanted to track also maybe 1 standard deviation? Of course, you can add another Bollinger Band. I think we've done this before where you stack, different Bollinger Bands on top of each other. So one, you set it at 2, and the other one, you set it at 1, and then it's kind of looks like one single indicator, but it's just stacking indicators on top of each other. If you really wanted to modify the Bollinger Band so it always gives you not only the 2 standard deviations, but also the 1 standard deviation, that's something you can do now using the same process that we did for the Keltner channel and the %R as we saw here in class, okay? Guys, thank you so much for joining me today. This is great talking a little bit about EasyLanguage. If you have any questions, please feel free to reach out. We're always here every single week talking about the technology, and it's always great to have you. So look out for the schedule of events, see what's coming up. We have a special presentation this afternoon. I'm not sure if you guys are aware, but we have a guest speaker from Eurex who's going to talk about some of futures, international futures that are available on the TradeStation platform and that you can trade with your futures account. He's going to be on at 4:30 p.m. Eastern time. You're all invited. So see you guys later, and great having you. Have a wonderful afternoon. Bye-bye.